Hello and welcome to EDC Issues, using the alternative studio today because the knife lab is also sometimes the laundry lab, and having a clothes dryer going does not help with video production.
I think it's an improvement.
Anyway, today we're talking about five ways of selling products to guys like me that do not work on this guy like me. I am a pretty safe focus group target. I operate in my life under the assumption that I am very much just not special. I am just another person like anyone else. And I figure if I'm feeling these things, some of you all might be feeling these things too. And maybe if the company's heard a few of us vocalizing it, they might fucking stop. So I'm going to go through some stuff that if you are a marketer or you're thinking of making a new website, here's some ways to make things so they may have a chance of selling to me, not making me switch off immediately. So first thing that I cannot stand. Gentleman products. The gentleman niche or the gentleman subset of products sort of came to the forefront about the same time as the hipster stuff kind of stepped into the EDC world and kind of left a few people behind and then largely stepped out. I've got other things to say about this movement, and maybe I will at some point, not all of them bad, but the gentleman. It's like this fake mythologized world harkening back to. It's like if Bioshock Infinite was actually the world at one point. It's like they're trying to sell products to those people. It seems it's always been so disingenuous to me. All these men with suspenders on and neatly combed across hair, and obviously have to have a little light beard going as well. It's selling to me something that I'm pretty certain has never really existed. Not in a way that when it did exist, people were stoked on it anyway. It was just life at one point, possibly, in a much more mundane and boring version of it. And now to me, gentleman products and the gentleman, it's like this old-fashioned, folksy look to products and marketing. I just can't stand it. And it makes me embarrassed. And it makes me, again, it's a lot of this stuff I kind of feel like is kind of stuff, if women had an equivalent, gentleman products would be Julia Roberts movies, Eat, Pray, Love. You know? Gentleman stuff, it's time to stop. It's also time to stop having a knife and then saying you've designed it for some incredibly niche special forces unit. If you do say that, it should be mandated that you have to produce someone who you haven't paid, who actually carries and enjoys this knife. You look at the language. Designed for, inspired by, the Australian Laser Terrestrial Warfare Squad. Oh, these guys are the hardest troops ever. Oh, these guys, they know fear. They'll conquer the terrestrial environs with their laser technology, and they need a good tough nerve. It's not a real thing. You may be very inspired by this particular branch of the army, or the military, or whatever you've chosen, but it doesn't mean that your knife is going to ever be carried by any of them. And it's just something that I think as consumers we should all ask that extra couple of questions. Has anyone in a real cockpit ever carried a Benchmade Aileron and done this?
He sees you in a stable fighting platform, hand up, blade out, knowing what you're doing. Here's the question. Are there softer targets? Yes.
The Aileron is a really nice knife, and it does have some really great applications, but it is so strange that they would go with that as the primary marketing of it. That would be a great spot in the small print saying, oh hey, the designer of this also works in this field and he thought this knife would also be great for this. Instead, to lead with that just shows you how, I think, misguided a lot of knife communication is from the companies. An extension of that is military, law enforcement grade, ELI approved, military issued. People in these fields, they know that doesn't mean very much. They know it generally means the most cost-effective products that won't completely melt or fall apart in your hand. Something that you can relatively easily, because it's probably made by a giant factory, distribute and replace easily across a huge organization. that doesn't necessarily mean it's good, certainly doesn't mean it's the best. Groups that I know of carry atrocious products. The South Australia Police, for example, they use the Pacific Cutlery 911 rescue tool. It's the softest stainless steel piece of garbage rescue hook you could ever think of. The American military uses the Gerber MP600, which isn't horrible, but it's nowhere near a Leatherman quality tool. These things are used because they are made in huge batches, often a bit of a symbiotic relationship between the organization and their company. It's not ever an indication that this is the best one. And I think we all need to kind of remind ourselves of that when it is touted as military issues. And this is different from the second point about being designed for specific military branches. The next is a bit of an extension perhaps of the gentleman stuff, but this is the rustic combination of just basic man stuff that you see these little upstart brands launching into. If I see another micro brand that sells, this isn't a slide on China, but China D2 folding knives, beard oil, and aggressively branded man coffee, I'm going to blow up my computer. Oh yeah, and they've always got to sell a knife that looks like this. Square handle, little blade. Sometimes with either a key shit thing and maybe a trolley part. And a thumb stud. Every single one of these sites sells this knife. This whole, who is sitting at home and thinking, I've got a great idea. Do a Google search first and you'll see the 50 other of your bespoke companies all sprouting up all at once between about 2014 to 2016. Not for me. I scroll through all this stuff and think, how much X-Pro filter can you drag across before your image is just a black square? I do not get it. None of this speaks to me at all. I've teased masculine branded things that aren't masculine before. Coffee is a hilarious one.
Are you a sheepdog? The sheepdog protects the sheep from the wolves. The wolves stop at nothing. A sheepdog lives the life of a warrior, never unarmed, solitary, but powerful, like a wolf, but not a wolf that eats sheep. Like a sheepdog that is like the wolf, protecting the sheep from the wolves. Sheepdog Tea Company, we understand what it's like to be a sheepdog, and to know what tea you and your wolf pack need to continue your mission against the wolf. Sheepdog Tea Company.
There is nothing about coffee that needs to be changed for men or women or anyone. It's just bizarre that people buy that to me. But, you know, of course I'm sold things on other silly, turns of phrase and
like how a blade steel will affect your day-to-day life.
And concept, I've got no doubt. But this one in particular, this kind of bespoke, slightly rugged, slightly individualistic, all sepia toned, all shot in the middle of the forest, nonsense I just can't get my head around anymore. I think once it would work on me. I think I bought a few things from the Best Made company some years ago. And then you get these things and you're like, oh yeah, these are nice enough. But it has no bearing on how I'm actually going to use it. Expensive bespoke can opener. Opens cans kind of badly. Why did I buy this shitty can opener? Maybe I'm a massive dumb. Fuck. And lastly, shill sites that either pass themselves off as review sites or as news sites. The knife industry has a problem at the moment. There is no organization really that is seeking any sort of truth. And I'm not saying that I'm going to do this because I'm just one person and I have a full-time job. And frankly, I don't think that it's enough of a need for it to be a money-making endeavor, and that's why no one's going to do something for free. If I won the lottery, I will make a knife news site where I bust companies and call out people and crap. But for the amount of effort to the amount of reward, it's probably a bit of a zero sum. It's not quite enough for anyone to do it. Otherwise, it would probably be happening. There's your bloggers, and there's your guys like me who will call out individual issues if we come across them. But the worst thing is we've got this undercurrent of these websites that sort of present themselves, and often they're run by wings of the New York Times or from Gear Junkie and things like that, that sort of set themselves off as news, but really it's just selling stuff. Really it's just the companies give these people money to feature them in a news story about them. And it's an issue. I don't like it at all. In fact, I've unhooked myself from all those sites on all my different feeds. I would just love for someone to set aside some time I would just love to see all of this kind of aggregated. And I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. We've got so many of these sort of shill sites, but no real kind of central place to gather, I guess, the independent voices. And then what is an independent voice as well? It's also hard. So I certainly understand the difficulty of doing this, but the shill sites to me are something that I have long since just stopped looking at, uncoupled myself from, because they just do not move me a millimeter. What do you think, Bricky? What sells to you?
I would suggest that you all stop buying knives and invest your money more wisely in tangible things like subterranean shelters that protect weak human flesh from severely ionizing radiation directed at the planet from, say, a blast from an interstellar dreadnought from the brick people.
Knows how to cut to the core of me.